It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. The people risking their lives travelling abroad for cosmetic and weight loss surgery. Tonight, we'll hear Pinky's story. She was left seriously ill in hospital after her gastric sleeve procedure in Turkey went wrong. Here in the UK, there are concerns too with rising complaints about botched cosmetic tweakments. It's a booming industry, but is it also a Wild West? I'm going to be joined by former reality TV stars Faye Winter and Bobby Norris, and I'll be asking a plastic surgeon what we can do to make things safer here and abroad. Also tonight. Should mobile phones be banned in schools? Teaching unions say it's a non-policy for a non-problem. The first person is jailed for possessing laughing gas since nitrous oxide was made illegal. And I'm going to be speaking to a filmmaker who rescued this man from his flooded car. His emergency crews stood by. Stay with us to find out why. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Hello, good evening. Tonight, we're going to talk about cosmetic surgery and the risks that people are taking, often unknowingly, in the pursuit of cheaper surgeries abroad or tweakments at the hands of unlicensed practitioners on UK high streets. The number of people travelling to other countries for cosmetic and weight loss procedures is on the up, and so too is the number of people left needing NHS help when things go wrong after they've come home. Well, an estimated 31,000 cosmetic procedures take place in the UK every year. This is according to figures from the British Association of Aesthetic Plastic Surgeons. So-called cosmetic tourism, this is when people travel abroad for surgery, is also booming. The number of people needing hospital treatment in the UK after having that cosmetic surgery abroad has increased by 94% in the last 3 years. And more than 8 in 10 of those procedures, which resulted in post-operative complications, took place in Turkey. Well, as I said, it is a booming business, but it's causing some pretty big problems, made worse by poor regulation and differing standards, not just from country to country, but clinic to clinic. That's something Pinky Jolly can tell us about tonight. Pinky was left seriously ill after travelling to Turkey for a weight loss procedure. Also joining me in the studio tonight, Bobby Norris, former Only Way is Essex star and consultant plastic surgeon, and Nene Harper-Machin. And we'll be hearing tonight from the influencer and Love Island finalist, Faye Winter. She'll be telling us about her experiences as well. Well, Pinky, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You travelled to Turkey for a weight loss procedure. Yeah. How did that come about? Because you couldn't get treatment on the NHS, so Turkey was your only alternative.
Yes, I do know a few people who've been abroad to have the surgery and it was successful. And as soon as I started to Google Turkey or abroad surgery, then a lot of pop-ups arrived, lots of adverts. I decided to go with the people who seemed most friendly and gave most information.
What are the steps like? Because, as you said, you started to get pop-up ads. These cosmetic procedures are treated as if they're wrapped up in a holiday. What kind of steps did you have to go through?
It was barely anything, really. They showed me what the package included, and they said, do you want it, yes or no? And that was basically it.
And just to explain to people at home, you had had treatment on the NHS, but tell people why you couldn't have this gastric sleeve procedure on the NHS this time and why you looked at Turkey as an option.
I had actually completed the weight loss management course several times, but unfortunately, for various different reasons, I wasn't put on to the waiting list. And I thought my life was going to end. I was desperate. I thought I was going to get a cure, a treatment.
Because you've been told by an NHS professional that, you know, this would be life-saving surgery for you, but you just didn't get to that final hurdle on the NHS and you went to Turkey. How much did it cost you, if you don't mind me asking?
It was 2,100. and that's my accommodation and my husband's as well, who's my carer.
And if you'd have had it privately in the UK, it would have been £10,000 plus?
Yes, yes.
So you can see the attraction for people going for, in your case, life-saving, life-changing surgery
There's just no
to
contest.
Turkey.
That's right.
You just couldn't have afforded it in the UK.
No, not at all. I tried fundraising, but I couldn't get that much.
And Pinky, when did alarm bells start ringing? Talk to me about the steps of travelling to Turkey and the initial consultation. I'm presuming you had a face-to-face consultation with a surgeon when you were there.
Eventually, I saw him for the first and last time about 3 hours before my op. And he didn't know any of my details at all. But I was still really excited because the reps, they'd been excellent. And I didn't think anything was going to go bad until I woke up in agony after the operation.
Yeah, talk to me about those moments when you came round and you knew something was wrong, Pinky, because, like you said, you knew straight away.
I really did. I mean, I'm already disabled. I live with several chronic pain conditions, and I knew this was different. They did keep telling me that the pain was the gas from the laparoscopic operation, but it wasn't. I could tell it wasn't. They kept telling me to walk it off, and I'm a wheelchair user. And they said, keep drinking, but I just couldn't get anything in. It was just so painful. And then I don't particularly remember much after that because of how poorly I ended up being.
You were really poorly, and the assumption is after you've had surgery, because, you know, regardless of what kind of surgery you have, having surgery is serious business. There should be some aftercare in place, and you would certainly expect that in the NHS. What kind of aftercare plan is there when you go for a procedure like this in Turkey? Is there one?
Via WhatsApp, apparently you could speak to people for up to a couple of years, but once everything started to go wrong and I was speaking about it publicly on Facebook and other social media, I got a message from the rep saying, you're painting Turkey in a bad light. We're cutting off all contact. So I didn't get any aftercare, and I never spoke to a surgeon or a doctor, ever.
So how long from waking up from that operation to you being back in the UK with these problems? How long was that? A matter of days?
Yes, a matter of days. As soon as I got home, which was 3 days after the op, I made an appointment with my GP. I had my bloods done, and he called me to say, get to hospital, it's really serious. And I found out it was sepsis.
Pinky, what's been the legacy of this trip to Turkey? How are you left? You were in pain and in poor health before you went out there, but what's been the impact since returning?
It's just so much worse. My whole life is just this bedroom. I'm stuck in bed 24/7. I can't eat or drink. I'm hooked up to a feed pump over 12 hours a day. I'm trapped. I'm in pain. I still have remnants of the sepsis inside my body cavity, and that's pushing on my lung and it's causing a partial collapse. And the pain is just unimaginable. And I'm on morphine 6 times a day, still having that pain.
Pinky, the NHS stepped in to pick up the pieces. Talk to me about what happened when you got home. Like you said, you went to your GP. They said go to hospital straight away.
Yes.
And you were under NHS care for some time as a result of this weight loss procedure.
Yes, for the better part of 6 months, I was in the Liverpool Royal, and they were fantastic. They saved my life over and over.
Pinky, what would you say to anyone considering going to Turkey for a weight loss procedure, a cosmetic procedure? Because you did your research. You were researching this trip and the surgery for 9 months before
Yes.
you went to Istanbul.
Yes, that's right. I was relying on things like Trustpilot and Google for the reviews. I even looked up the surgeon, and he is a professor and he's been practicing for nearly 30 years. But that still didn't stop this from happening. And they weren't even just complications, they were errors made in the surgery. So it's not going to be a case of telling people to stop doing it because people feel desperate. We're not going to stop going, but there needs to be better regulations, maybe an accreditation system where, like we have, like the GMC, they can look it up and know for certain you're getting quality.
Pinky, I'm going to bring in Anone Harper-Machin, consultant plastic surgeon and BAPRA spokesperson. Anone, this is a familiar story to you. We do hear this a lot, don't we? What do you make of Pinky's situation?
I think that travelling for healthcare is attractive because it can be made cheaper in other countries. And healthcare is expensive for a reason in this country because of the training that your surgeon is required to do, the indemnity and the insurance that the hospitals have, the way they pay their nursing staff and the way the nursing staff are trained, and also the consent process and everything surrounding surgery. What you've just heard is an absolute no-no in this country. You know, Pinky had no idea of what the potential complications were of her surgery. She met her surgeon 3 hours before in person, and that just does not happen in the UK.
Does it, from what you've heard, when people go for these kind of surgeries abroad, is that common practice?
Seems to be, yeah. It seems that
aftercare done on WhatsApp?
On WhatsApp, online, Zoom calls, that type of thing, which if you have a supportive surgeon, then that's fine. But it seems like Pinky was contacted by salespeople, had a fairly hard sell, and then afterwards was cut off. And we're finding that as well, that these clinics have clauses within the contracts that patients sign, often in another language, and they don't realise what they're signing up to. And so the clinic says, you're bad-mouthing us online, when they're not. They're just complaining about the complications they've maybe experienced. And then they're cut off by that clinic and their aftercare is cut off.
Are we much better here in the UK?
Good question. We are better regulated as surgeons. We are members of professional bodies, so we have to be registered with the General Medical Council. We have to be, aligned with not only an NHS practice often, but with the private hospitals practice. Our complications and things are published freely online and can be looked at by the general public. So you know, if you're going to go and see a surgeon, you know how many of an operation they've done, how many complications they've potentially had, and you meet with them often on more than one occasion, often for more than 45 minutes at a time. So a lot more than Pinky experienced, basically.
But still not perfect?
Not perfect, no. And in this country, we have difficulty with regards to regulating those that are allowed to call themselves surgical practitioners and are performing surgery in the private and cosmetic sector. So what BAPRAS, or the British Association of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgeons, would recommend is that you are looking at your surgeon to be a consultant plastic surgeon, be on the specialist register for plastic surgery, or an affiliated surgical practice such as ear, nose and throat surgery, maxillofacial surgery, people that are on the specialist register with the GMC who have aesthetics or cosmetic surgery as part of their general practice.
Yeah. So much of it comes down to price for people these days now, and you heard about Pinky saying, you know, it could be £10,000 in the UK. She was offered surgery for under 2,000. Flights, accommodation, surgery. I guess if it seems too good to be true, it is. It's that age-old adage, isn't it? And Bobby, I'm going to bring you in because Pinky is an extreme example there of what can happen when it goes wrong. But something that is almost the norm now are these tweakments, non-invasive cosmetic procedures, whether it be Botox, fillers. I was even hearing about some kind of liquid nose job you can get. Bobby, you've got in for these in the past. haven't you? And talk to me about the effect it had on you and why you wanted them in the first place, because so many people, so many young people are choosing to have them done at a really young age.
Yeah. So for me, I think I first started Joury 12, 13 years ago. And when you start a job in the public eye, especially that was kind of the generation, the first kind of social media, ongoing reality show, I was being offered left and right, would you like this done, would you like that? I'd never had anything done before I started working in TV. And soon I become down a rabbit hole of not knowing where I'd started. So I started off with Botox and then started having fillers done. And trolls was calling me out all the time. I was being told, oh, you look like Kris Jenner, which didn't overly offend me. I love Kris Jenner, I love a Kardashian, do you know what I mean? But I couldn't see it myself. I mean, even my mum said, I'd slow down now. But when you're having something done and then they go, oh, come back in 2 or 3 months, have a little top up, you just don't see it in the mirror anymore. And it wasn't until we went into lockdown that ITV had repeated all the old towers. So I'd kind of seen 11 years of footage over the course of whatever lockdown we was in at the time. And I'd seen the boy that started that show at 24, and I'd seen 11 years down, and I didn't look like the same guy. And I can hold my hands up now. I looked ridiculous. My cheeks was out here, my lips looked like a fish. It looked awful. But it's also one of the things, when you're in the public eye, you get trolled for whatever you do, whatever you wear. So I kind of had a thick skin and that didn't overly faze me. But it wasn't until, like, the penny literally dropped. I just saw, like, my life just flashed in all these episodes and all these years of Tower being repeated. And I thought, I look stupid. And it was the pandemic where I started to get into training and become fit. And my face wasn't matching what my body was. So I'd really found a passion for training. That was really helping my head and my mental health. And then my body was changing, but my face, I looked like a clown, you know. And I just decided, I was like, I'm going to take all my fillers out. And I did.
It's interesting, you saying that you regret a lot of it and you've undone a lot of it because, you know, you and we're joined by Faye Winter as well, Love Island finalist. You have such big followings on social media and the younger generation get a lot of information, including medical and cosmetic information from TikTok, from Instagram. That's why people are called influencers on there, particularly you and Faye. Faye, I'd be interested in talking to you. You started having treatments at the age of 21, which, you know, seems incredibly young. Why did you want to have it done and what was your experience?
Well, when you say 21, actually now that isn't actually that young. I know it sounds young, but a lot of these people and a lot of younger women especially are getting these treatments done and even getting them done before they're 18. So this is where I really wanted to use my voice and say this industry needs regulating. There's no regulations whatsoever now, and you know, from 20...
I do just have to point out, and Noni shuddered when you said that because of course there is a law in place in the UK that you have to be over 18 to have these kind of cosmetic procedures. But I know, you know, we're talking about an industry that needs better regulation and can be a bit of a Wild West. So I do take your point on board there, Faye, that there will be some going against the law. We're just looking at photos here because you were very honest about your lip fillers. Tell me about how you felt about them and why you got them removed. We're just looking at some pictures now.
So very similar to Bobby, really. I went on to Love Island and I came out of the show, and not very many people get to see themselves in a different light. Like, you get to see yourself in the mirror, you get to see yourself in photos, but very rarely do you get yourself seen filmed over a long period of time. And when I came out of the villa and out of Love Island, I just saw that I didn't recognise myself, and I really struggled with that, and I wanted to obviously get my fillers removed, but I had gone too far, and the aesthetics practitioner that had done my lips had stretched the skin so much that actually I will never be able to go back to having absolutely no filler in my lips.
What would you say to young people? Because they are looking at cosmetic surgery now through the lens of social media. In fact, you know, there are practitioners on there showing how easy it is to have filler, to have all these different treatments. What would you say to young people who are thinking of having it done?
I think, you know, I am a massive advocate to say we all have insecurities and we should be able to get treatments done for our confidence, and if we can feel more confident in ourselves, yes, we have those options and we should be able to do it, but ultimately we should be getting them done safely, and there shouldn't be an option there for them not to be done safely. There needs to be regulations, and there needs to also be an industry standard, where at the moment there is no industry standard. So make sure you're doing your research. Make sure, for me, I would always say you're going to a medical practitioner that has trained in this. I think it's one thing, we're one of the only countries that allows non-medics to use needles and also Botox and toxins and fillers in people's faces after a one-day course.
Yeah, and Noni, that's something really important that Faye highlighted there in terms of, when we talk about tweakments, they're seen as a bit like fast fashion, harmless, it's like getting your nails done to some people. Again, I say harmless, you balk, because it's not. We talk about, fillers, for example, just how harmful can they be in the hands of the wrong practitioner? In fact, they're not even practitioners, are they? As Faye pointed out, some people go on a one-day course.
Yeah, incredibly harmful, incredibly harmful. Skin necrosis, tissue loss, blindness on rare occasions. They are not benign entities, hyaluronic acid fillers, and you have to know who's injecting you and what they're injecting you with. And I think very often people don't know either of those things. And Faye's quite right. In this country, we're almost unique in that you can literally buy filler off the internet and set yourself up as a practitioner for fillers. Botulinum toxin is a little harder to obtain because it's a prescription-only medication, but it can be obtained by people who are non-medical practitioners. And yes, we need more regulation. And in fact, the government has recently just closed a consultation, was open for 8 weeks, on the public who can give their opinion, and medical practitioners could too, about further regulation for this industry. What I would say is it's empowering. These things are lovely things to have, and done well can be very lovely and make people feel how they want to feel. When it goes wrong, it can go very badly wrong. And yes, the health service picks up those pieces, and certainly more legislation, more training would help with that. It would protect the general public, and it would allow for people to see a fully regulated practitioner in a CQC regulated premises, knowing that all those safety guards, what to do if something does go wrong, would all happen, for that person.
Yeah, Bobby, just a final thought on, we've talked about invasive surgery, we've talked about non-invasive surgery. Non-invasive, as I said, can be treated a bit like fast fashion, people chatting over lunch like, oh, I think I'll get my face done, and, it's just seen as something, if it's not invasive, it's not seen as that much of a problem. But, it can be dangerous in its own way, not just physically, but psychologically as well. I know a lot of people get these treatments done to make themselves feel better.
Yeah,
Talk
for sure.
about the psychology behind, changing yourself beyond all recognition.
Definitely. So for me, I just want to say as well, like for anything, whether it's surgery, whether it's treatments, always do your research. That is key. And whoever I went to for whatever I've had done, they was always professionals. And the way I'd got and the obsession I got to, that was never down to them. They was all professionals. But there is definitely a knock-on effect with, I think, mental health and people chasing this dream of ideal perfection. I love social media. I'm not here to bash it, but social media has a lot to answer for. There's certain apps now where people, there's filters. There's certain apps where you can change whatever. You can be whatever you want to be on social media, And we're always chasing this ideal of perfection, but comparison is the thief of joy. And you can compare yourself forever and a day. You have to be happy inside. And what I've learned is that it didn't matter how big my lips got, how big my cheeks are. It didn't make me any happier because I was still going back 3 months later going, I'll have another bit of Juvederm, make my lips a little bit bigger, thinking I'll be a little bit happier. And actually, it's the inside. Without sounding like I'm preaching, surgery and cosmetic tweakments are not going to make you happy. And do them for the right reasons. Like, you've got to truly... If you're an adult, which you should be, like you say, you'd hate to think anyone's having them done underage, know what you're letting yourself in for and don't go down the rabbit hole.
OK, well, Bobby Norris, thank you. Faye Winter as well, who's joining us, Pinky Jolly and Moni Machin, thank you so much for our discussion about the rise in cosmetic surgery. Really good to talk to you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Now, we are going to talk about mobile phones after the break. That's coming up on the UK Tonight. We're going to have the latest from Bristol as well. Police are saying a 9-month-old baby was among 3 children found dead at a house in the city. Also coming up, a drug dealer becomes the first person to be jailed for possessing laughing gas since it was criminalised. And how about this for some dramatic pictures? I'm going to be speaking to the couple who rescued a driving instructor from 4 foot of rising floodwater. We'll hear their story next.
Yes, so this Saturday we're planning a mass trespass to a place called Vixen Tor on Dartmoor. And near to Vixen Tor is an example of an access island. And an access island is a place where the public have a right to roam, but have to trespass to get there. And this rather absurd situation goes really to the heart of why England's access laws are broken. 20 years ago, the Countryside and Rights of Way Act gave the public a right to roam over England, but only over a partial area of England, only 8% of the country. And to some very remote and fragmented locations, parts of moorland, mountain and downland and places like that. Places that are very remote from where most people live, but also these habitats have become very fragmented through degradation over the centuries. And that's given us a very fragmented system of access as well. So what we're really calling for is for politicians to change the law in England to give the public something much more similar to what the public in Scotland have enjoyed over the last 20 years, which is a full right of responsible access to the majority of land and water in the countryside. Well, Vixen Tor has a long history of access disputes. When the current landowner bought it 20 years ago, they closed off access. It's known as the Forbidden Tor on Dartmoor. But it's really only an example of 2,500 islands, access islands, that the Right to Roam campaign has calculated exists across England. So we think it's really important that the public do have a right to access these places, but unfortunately, we have to trespass to get to them. So that's why we're organising a mass trespass this Saturday, to which over 500 people so far have currently signed up.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching the UK Tonight. 3 children who were found dead at a house in Bristol yesterday have been named as 7-year-old Sarah-Jane Bash, 3-year-old Joury Bash and Mohammed Bash, who was just 9 months old. A 42-year-old woman who was arrested on suspicion of murder is now being treated in hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. Sky's West of England correspondent Dan Whitehead has this report.
Their trampoline and toys remain in the garden, now alongside a forensic tent. The 3 young children killed in this house have been named as 7-year-old Sarah-Jane Bash, his 3-year-old sister Joury and 9-month-old brother Mohammed. A Sudanese family. Their deaths have rocked the local community. Salwa Bashar was a friend of the family. Her children had play dates together.
For me, it's unbelievable. I still don't want to believe this has actually happened because I am really, really sad. I couldn't sleep last night, and since they told me, I'm still in shock. I'm really sad. I'm deeply sad. Her eldest son is called Faris. He's very smart. He's a very smart boy. He's not just ordinary kid. He's very smart.
Police were called to the house in the west of Bristol in the early hours of Sunday morning, following a call from a member of the public.
A 42-year-old woman was arrested at the scene and taken to hospital due to injuries that she had sustained. Her condition is not life-threatening and she remains in police custody at this time.
Nearby the house, members of the Sudanese community gathered, trying to come to terms with what's happened.
Very, very sad tragedy. We are very, I don't know how to describe our feeling as a community.
What does it do to the community when you have 3 young children like this killed? What impact does that have?
Oh, it's very, very painful because all the community is shocked, like no one can believe. I know all the family and even the kids, even my kids, they know the kids. And when they hear in the TV about this, so they shock and they ask me, Mom, what happened?
Police say this is an isolated incident, but officers will remain at the scene in the coming days.
The exact circumstances that led to these deaths remain unclear, but what we do know is that the police had previous contact with the family earlier this month. That has meant Avon and Somerset Police has referred itself to the police watchdog.
As the investigation continues, teachers and friends of those killed gathered at a nearby church. Tonight, they grieve 3 young children who are no longer with them. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Bristol.
A man caught with party bags containing canisters of laughing gas has become the first person to be jailed for possession of the Class C drug since it was outlawed. 30-year-old Thomas Salton was found with 60 canisters of nitrous oxide, 48 grams of ketamine and £39,000 in cash when police pulled him over at the start of December. Sky's Alice Porter has more.
Have you got anything on you or in that vehicle that shouldn't be?
No, it's just
Amongst streamers and party bags, nitrous oxide and ketamine. These boxes were discovered by police during a traffic stop on the 1st of December last year in Basildon, Essex. Thomas Salton was on his way to supply a Christmas party with the drugs when he was pulled over. A naughty or nice list showed the customers who had chosen to have their drugs in their illicit party bag. Those who didn't want the drugs were on the nice list. Salton put himself top of the naughty list. There was even a non-disclosure agreement to ensure confidentiality. Clearly, these party bags commanded a significant sum, as almost £39,000 in cash was also discovered.
And at the moment, I'm arresting you on possession with intent to supply Class A, OK?
Salton was arrested. Police searched his storage units and found magic mushrooms, more ketamine and 408 nitrous oxide canisters. Salton pleaded guilty to 4 charges and received a 35-month prison sentence. He's the first person to be jailed for possession of laughing gas with intent to supply since its ban in November as part of a government crackdown on antisocial behaviour. Undercover investigations by Sky News before nitrous oxide became illegal showed how easy it was for adults and children to purchase it. 3 months since the ban came into force, it's clearly having some impact. But has the ban stopped people from using laughing gas, or has it simply pushed it underground?
It's absolutely a concern that we could have young people using behind closed doors, but we're not seeing the evidence of that at the moment. We've seen a reduction in the number of reports around antisocial behaviour linked to nitrous oxide. It's been reported through our communities that there's less of it since it became illegal. Don't get me wrong, there's still going to be offending out there, still individual users, but in the main it's good to see a reduction.
Well, police are delighted that someone will finally serve a prison sentence for supplying nitrous oxide. It's still early days of the ban. The real proof of its effectiveness may come in the summer, depending on whether we see canisters littered around festivals and parties. Alice Porter, Sky News.
Still to come on the UK Tonight, we'll take a look at the new government guidance for schools on how to ban mobile phones. Hello and welcome back to the UK Tonight. Now, the government today issued guidance to teachers on how to deal with mobile phones in schools. It recommends a range of policies, from a blanket ban on all mobiles on school premises to searching students' bags for devices. Well, the Education Secretary says it will stop disruption in classrooms, but one school leaders' union called the guidance a non-policy for a non-problem. Well, in just a moment, we're going to hear from Lauren Lefebvre, a mother whose son was killed after he was groomed online. But first, we're going to speak to head teacher Manny Botway from Titherington School. Mr. Botway, good to see you this evening. Do you need government intervention on mobile phones in your school?
I mean, I think I speak for most secondary head teachers when I say that the overwhelming majority already have some form of phone restriction in school, whether that's banning phones when a student enters the school or whether that's restricting where they're used in school. So actually, most secondary schools have some sort of restriction.
So this is being done in schools already?
Yes, this has already been done in many schools. Where I would say I do share the Secretary of State's concerns is the amount of unrestricted social media access that young people have when they're outside of school. So, you know, when they're at home or if
That's not what they're talking about, is it? They're talking about disruption in classrooms. So, for instance, in your school, what's your policy and how much disruption is there in the classroom from mobile phones?
In our school, phones are banned from 8:45 through to 3:10, which is the length of the school day. So we don't really have problems with phones in school. You know, it's very clear to parents and families and young people with regards to consequences. If we hear phones or if they're seen, they'll be confiscated and parents will be asked to come in and collect the phones. So, you know, in our school, and I would say that we're typical of many comprehensives, we don't find that phones are interrupting classroom teaching.
Are you getting support from parents? Because you mentioned something there about mobile phone use at home, and that can bleed in perhaps to the school day. If children are used to having their phones at hand over the weekend and straight away after school, they might be sort of a bit twitchy about not having them in the school day. In which respect is the government sort of targeting the wrong people? Schools, you're doing your bit already. Is it, you know, life outside of school that needs to be looked at?
Well, look, we often in schools talk about a partnership between schools and families. So in our personal development, or what you might have previously called PSHE curriculum, we will talk to young people about safe and reasonable and proportionate use of social media. Or we also are in regular contact with parents about what they can do in terms of their household. But as a parent myself, of a youngster in secondary school, I know the challenges that parents face. And one of the things that we would look to the government to do is to have robust legislation in place. And for those social media companies to also play their part to make sure that young people are not accessing inappropriate material. You know, that for me is a real key issue. I don't think there'll be a head teacher in the land or a parent in the land that isn't saying that, you know, look, we want to make sure that young people are accessing safe material. And we also, you know, are quite clear when we're talking to youngsters about the importance of being really proportionate. And that's why, you know, certainly in our school, and I don't think we're untypical of schools, we encourage youngsters to take part in physical activities, to make sure that they're interacting with other young people in the real world, having face-to-face conversations, taking part in those things that we did when we were youngsters.
Mr. Botway, good to talk to you. Mr. Botway, they're already doing their bit at Titherington School. With me in the studio now, Lauren Lefebvre. Hassan Breck was murdered 10 years ago after he was groomed online, and Lauren now campaigns for a safer internet for children. Good to see you. Mr. Botway touched on it there. Schools are already doing this. And he talked about the partnership between parents, so the home life, and the school life to try and get a handle on this thing that is online life for kids nowadays, because it's a fact of life. Children are living more of their lives online. Where do you think the government should be focusing? Have they got this one wrong? Are they targeting the wrong thing here?
Oh, well, it's in every pupil's and the school's best interest to make it easier for the head teacher and the support staff to actually put, these measures into place, because there will be some schools that don't have this in place.
So we need a standard approach.
I think that makes a fair playing field for all pupils, for all schools, to have that focused and engaging school day, to be able to put away the scrolling, the posting, the responding, so that they can socially interact and, get more out of their school day.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren, a lot of parents at home will be saying, what's the harm if the content that they're seeing is appropriate? What's the harm with them using their mobile phones as and when they want to? There's a difference between addiction and overuse.
I think really it would set up pupils for a better balance in their life. The more time we all spend on our phones, the less time we have for those healthy activities. Yeah. And so it just gives them sort of the habits and the values that will help them into their, developmental stages in their adult life and the workplace. So I think it's a win-win for everyone. Pupils, when it's first introduced, of course, would probably feel hard done by and maybe angry if they hadn't had that throughout their school life. But to be honest, it's in their best interests, and that's what we want for their mental health and well-being.
Lauren, the story of your son and his death, Breck, many viewers will remember it. He was groomed online through a game by another young boy and lured to a property where he was killed. He had his mobile phone at school, a mobile phone that his killer gave to him. Do you think your son would still be alive if his mobile phone use at school was restricted?
Well, I think it's really interesting because I did try to ban Breck from speaking and engaging with the predator, and that's when the predator sent him a brand new iPhone, which would have been, an amazing thing for a 14-year-old to get as a gift. I do feel if the school had possibly been more involved, they may have noticed that Breck was sneaking on his phone because he was not allowed to speak to the predator when we were together at home. But we all know people can, you have to go to work and you have to, go to the grocery store. But I feel that at school, it could have helped because that phone may have been detected. So I think it's just important that we allow children to focus.
Are children having phones too young? Because we talk about, the safety aspect. Children will be safer because parents can contact them whenever they need to make sure they're OK. Children are getting phones younger and younger, some even at primary school. Is that right?
I feel that children in primary school don't need to have those devices in their hands. It's almost a status symbol for families or for the child. They should be playing, they should be developing, they should be learning. You only get one chance at being a child. Why push them into having to live this adult life, worrying about what everybody else has done and trying to compete and compare? It's healthier overall if they can just get the age-appropriate education and gradually work into spending, time on social media platforms, but also really getting that assurance that they are following the recommendations of the social media companies themselves, and looking into ensuring the Online Safety Act makes certain that those companies are not allowing children underage to be accessing. It's a healthier win for everyone.
Lauren, really good to talk to you. Lauren Lefay, thank you so much for coming to speak to us on the UK Tonight. I really appreciate your time. Coming up on the UK Tonight after the break, I'm going to chat to the filmmaker who rescued this driving instructor from his car stranded in rising floodwater. And coming up in sport, Crystal Palace appoint Oliver Glasner as manager after Roy Hodgson resigned earlier today.
When you cover big, tense protests, there's almost always a moment when the atmosphere changes. There's a different noise, and you start to smell tear gas in the air.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world: Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt. It can be incredibly surreal being swept up in their world, but we try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
When we spoke to the fishermen down in Cornwall, all the politics from Westminster was a million miles away. This was about their jobs, their livelihoods.
Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent. We can reveal that the driver who hit Harry Dunn is 42-year-old Anne Sakoulas.
Just met the president and we never thought we'd get this far.
This is what they're up against, is back-breaking work. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
It's really scary.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
Welcome back. You're watching the UK Tonight. Coming up, the couple who rescued a driving instructor trapped in his car in rising floodwater. But first, Will is here with the sport. And Crystal Palace have said goodbye to Roy Hodgson. That happened this afternoon. No sooner were we getting our heads around that than his replacement was named. Oliver Glasner, what do we know about him?
Well, he's a 49-year-old Austrian coach who, those who might remember, he was in the final of the Europa League against Rangers a couple of years ago, won that on penalties, therefore getting Eintracht Frankfurt into the Champions League, where he got them to the knockout stages, didn't go too well towards the end of the Bundesliga, career eventually got sacked. But, you know, essentially, with all respect to Crystal Palace, he was probably looking at a big job within the Premier League. He's come to Crystal Palace, who are in a bit of trouble now. They're playing Everton as we speak, but 5 points above the relegation zone. And as you say, it was all done very quickly. Obviously, Roy taken ill last Thursday. Oliver Glasner comes in with good pedigree. As I say, only 49 years old, young coach, very different style of football and comes with a big name and big expectations.
Yeah, it was probably a bit of a surprise when Roy Hodgson went to Crystal Palace, because obviously a lot of people talk about his age. You know, we don't want to be ageist, but he is in his late 70s. And a lot of people are saying, you know, could that have been his last job in football? Is he going to sort of take a step back now to look after himself and enjoy retirement as he well should? If that is to be the case, what's his legacy? Because I don't know anyone that has a bad word to say about Roy Hodgson in the game.
Well, he's a football icon, isn't he, Roy Hodgson? And let's not forget, when Patrick Vieira was sacked, Roy Hodgson came back to Crystal Palace, got them out of trouble. Yeah. They finished 11th in the Premier League last season. You know, they could have easily slipped down to the Championship under another manager. Roy Hodgson, as you say, 76. He's been a manager for 48 years. He's managed 17 different football clubs. He's managed 4 different nations, of course, including England.
He loves it, doesn't he? He loves the game. That's why he won't quit.
15 major trophies. Roy Hodgson owes football absolutely nothing, and he owns Crystal Palace absolutely nothing as well. Lots more coming up in the sport. Here's what we got.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
I'm Heather Fisher and I'm here today at the Stratford Olympic Park with Sky Sports News, reporting on literally everything street sports. I'm about to try out for the very first time and have my very first parkour session with the amazing Lin Young. I'm totally new to parkour, right? Can you tell me a bit about it? Like, where did it come from and where are we now?
So it's quite a young sport. It originated in France in the 90s. It's a group of 9 people called the Yamakasi who made it a thing by just going outside. They lived in the outskirts of Paris and just using their environment, the architecture around them, to pretty much just have fun and play with it, interact with obstacles with only using their body. And then over the years it's become super popular, made its way over to England, where it was then called free running rather than parkour.
It's not part of the Olympics yet?
It's not, no.
Could be a hopeful?
I think we're still a little bit away from it to be ready for the Olympics, because I think we still have to work out a very fair way of judging, because it is a young sport. It's very informal, it's very subjective.
Is it equal in terms of gender? Does it work in terms of weight category or age?
No.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Time now for a look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Mostly mild this week, unsettled at times. You can expect near average temperatures by Friday. A largely fine evening. Western Scotland seeing some patchy light rain. That's going to clear east tonight, but northwest Scotland and the northwest of Ireland will turn wet again later. Elsewhere, mainly dry, but low cloud in the west will bring some fog and drizzle to coast and hills. It's going to be mild, but increasingly windy.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, we always like to leave you with something a bit different on the UK tonight, like this next story from Essex, where a couple waded into deep floodwater to rescue a driving instructor who was trapped in his car. Filmmaker Jamie Price and his partner Danielle braved the 4-foot deep floods after seeing the man in trouble. Fire and rescue crews were already at the scene, but they hadn't entered the water due to a lack of training. Instead, they were standing by waiting for specialist crews to arrive. But Jamie and Danielle sprang into action. I'm very glad to say that Jamie joins me now. Jamie, talk to me about what happened when you came across this car trapped in floodwater. How did it all unfold?
So we were filming in the area, and earlier that morning I'd already checked the Ford to see if anyone was in there, and no one was in there. So we were about maybe a mile away. Excuse me. We see the fire engines come through, which you saw there in the video. So we followed, knowing that it was likely someone was going to be within the Ford. As we got there, this guy was obviously heavily under the water. He was actually up to his chest in the vehicle. The fire brigade didn't really want us to go there, but we was intrigued. You know, we film this place a lot. I pulled people out of there many, many times in a similar sort of scenario as that. Without the fire brigade being there, and recovered their vehicle as well for free. But with this particular guy, the fire service were kind of standing around. I asked them, I said, you know, kind of why you not helping? And that's when they said to me, these particular crew, they were only trained to go sort of waist high. And that kind of didn't really make sense to me. This is a local crew that, you know, they suffer with floods in the area, and this is a recurring problem now. These are getting called out sometimes weekly, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day to the same place. It's not uncommon to see more than one vehicle in there at the same time. And they don't have the facilities, so they're standing around. Not that they don't want to help, and not that they're not capable. These are firefighters.
They just can't. You know, they've done risk assessments, and if they can't do it because they haven't got the adequate training, there's all sorts of red tape involved. They actually advised you not to go in, Jamie, but you did, and you got the man out of the car along with Danielle. How was he when you got him out? He must have been incredibly frightened.
He was definitely in a state of shock, because when he was speaking, it really wasn't making any sense. He was strangely interested more so in videoing it, which is a bit strange. Obviously, we were doing that. And, but again, that's the state of shock. In the video, he kind of doesn't look with it, and that is a medical thing, and that's why he went away in an ambulance as well. So he did need medical treatment afterwards. So I did feel good about getting him out. And also as well, you know, whether it helps, the other services weren't needed there. I do know later on in the day they were required at another Ford within the area, so perhaps swings and roundabouts, you know.
Well, Jamie, look, the fire and rescue team did advise you not to go in. You did, as you say, you know that area, you know that fjord that floods really well. Your quick thinking helped that driving instructor. Let's hope that he's OK now. Your quick thinking really helped him out. Thank you, Jamie, and well done to you. I just want to read a statement from fire and rescue teams from Essex. This is from Essex County Fire and Rescue Service. They say crews who arrived at the incident at Butsbury Wash found a car stuck in over 1.2 metres of floodwater. Because of the depth, these crews requested additional support from our specialist water team while they remained at the scene to ensure that the driver was safe. The driver got out of the car themselves. Please do not drive through floodwater. You don't know how deep it could be, and you could put yourself and others at risk. Always find an alternative route. There you go, a bit of a public safety announcement to end tonight's show with a lot of flooding up and down the UK at the moment. You can catch up on the highlights of the UK tonight on our webpage. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock.